Alright, welcome back to Pro Filmmakers. My name is Dražan Štader. I'm a professional director cinematographer and I have something truly delicious for all of you today. In today's show, we are going to explore a truly amazing cinema camera, a secret object of desire of most working cinematographers, one of the biggest camera revelations in 2019. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it is my pleasure to announce that we finally had the chance to test the Arri Alexa Mini LF, also known as the MILF. But before we jump into the nitty-gritty, just make sure to scratch that subscribe button and smash that bell as well. Good? All checked in? Great! It is completely clear that the full-frame sensor in new cinema cameras are here to stay. And today we are having a taste of the bookalicious, creamy, tasty cinema images from the MILF that will probably establish itself as the new age cinematographer go-to choice when it comes to advertising and cinema. On the subject of the modern full-frame cinema cameras, we have recently introduced the Canon C500 Mark II in one of our previous episodes. You can find the link here. But the MILF goes even one step beyond in terms of sensor size and introduces the LF format that stands for large format sensor, which is a tad bigger than the full-frame sensor. In order to squeeze all the juice from this new family of LF sensors, you will also need the LF Signature Prime lenses from Arri. Currently, the camera only shoots in 3 flavors of the LF mode, but future firmware upgrades will also allow shooting in S35 mode as well, without cropping the sensor. So instead of dropping specs and features, we were more interested in the real-life, hands-on experience and decided to take this beauty for a spin in a couple of different lighting situations. We also added 3 other cameras to this one-day challenge, a Red Dragon, a Canon C200 and an iPhone 11 Pro. Sounds interesting? Well, it is. But the final results, how these other cameras perform alongside and against the MILF, will be relieved in one of the future episodes of the Pro Filmmakers. So stay tuned. If you are ready to see this new Arri babe in action, then it's time to go. We were shooting this particular video test footage on a silky smooth Arri Signature Prime 47mm T1.8, which means that we had the privilege of using this beast in all of its gorgeousness. In this quick intro, we will rush through some of our favorite new features. The MILF body is essentially carrying the same carbon fiber body of an Alexa Mini, but with a few minor adjustments or better say improvements. The MILF retains the same exact modularity of the Alexa Mini that has now become the staple of the commercial video industry. This is a camera that can be still placed almost anywhere and yet can leave a modest footprint. The MILF can be easily used in handheld situations or on a gimbal or even on a car rack. First one, the sensor. The biggest difference and the biggest improvement, of course, is the 4.5K sensor size. The Alexa Mini LF uses the same identical sensor that is found in the Alexa LF. Basically, it's a sensor made out of 2 Arri Alexa Mini sensors which are vertically stitched together to create a seamless large format image. Second, new recording media. Unlike the Alexa LF, which uses S/S Pro cards, the Alexa Mini records to the new Codex compact drives. The drive will be formatted by the Alexa Mini, meaning both Arri RAW and ProRes can be recorded onto the same media without reformatting or switching drive. This really saves a lot of time on set. EVF. The MILF also gets a new viewfinder. The new viewfinder, called the MVF2, has a familiar form factor and keeps the same combination of EVF and flip-out LCD screen. While it does look similar, it is a completely new design and a lot higher quality than the previous. It also features a 4-inch instead of a 3-inch LCD screen. The new EVF is a huge improvement over the previous version. It is brighter, sharper, and a joy to use. use. One of the biggest improvements is the fact that it is now hot swappable. That means gone are the days of waiting the camera to reboot in the most inappropriate of the times on set. The creative flow is now safe, and switching in camera settings even when the camera is on a motorized gimbal is just a matter of seconds. The buttons. The MILF has now 6 assignable user buttons instead of just 3 of the Mini. Is this a biggie? Well, it is, because this simplifies the camera operator's life on set and saves a ton of production time on the long run. For our shooting, we choose the follow combo of these 6 buttons: ND filters, up and down, magnify, false colors, log check, and save image. It turned out to be quite a nice choice of buttons. Works really nice. The built-in microphones. The last but not the least, the MILF has now 2 built-in microphones for capturing scratch audio. Obviously, there is a lot more little tweaks and improvements over the Mini, but please, let's stop with the specs. Who wants to see some gorgeous footage? In no shape or form, I don't consider myself to be a camera test scientist, but when using a new camera, I always like to see how well it stretches in different, most common lighting cinematography situations. We decided to go with a couple of most commons. So let's take a look. So we started our tests of the MILF with the base ISO of 640 and the temperature of 4200 kelvins. It's a basic lifestyle setup with a huge soft overhead diffuse and a nice sky panel key light with a DOP choice Octa attached to it. So this is all fine and good, but let's stretch our limits a little bit, shall we? We continue the tests with one stop underexposure, and we are trying to find out how this camera behaves when trying to push the skin tones lower than 40 to 50 IRA to about the rate to 20 to 30 IRA. So let's see how it behaves. So here we are pushing the underexposure even further. We are going 2 stops under with the f-stop of 5.6. And as you can see, this camera holds amazingly well, retaining all this info in the shadows as well in the skin tones. Looks, there is still plenty of room to play with. So here, 3 stops underexposed at f8. And it's amazing when we do the recover thing. We still retain all the main details in the shadows as well as in the skin tones. However, even if we check the picture in the 200% magnification mode, we start seeing some image is getting a bit soft, but still no noticeable grain or noise patterns. Not even in the shadow areas. I mean, this is quite amazing. We are now 4 stops under at f11. And this is the first time that we are beginning to notice some traces of noise patterns in the shadow areas, as you can see, especially in 200% magnification mode. In 100%, the image still looks completely acceptable. I mean, the size of these photo sites really do the trick. This is a really good thing to know, that you have the leverage of having so much info to work in post. Overexposure time in the controlled studio still. So here we are back with our base ISO setting at 640. Now we are going to play with overexposure to see how much latitude can this camera take, since it is notorious for its film-like highlight retention and beautiful highlights roll-offs. In terms of lighting, we are still keeping everything the same, medium contrast type of scene. So we opened the f-stop to 2.8, and it basically means we have a situation of 1 stop overexposure, and judging from this picture, everything looks completely fine and dandy. Even when we magnify it, it still holds all the details really nicely. On this picture we went 2 stops overexposure, we played with the shutter speed and we opened up to 270 degrees, which means we got 1 stop of extra exposure on her face. And as you can see, it's completely acceptable. The picture looks completely fine. There is one thing that we can notice when we magnify to 200%. It's the tiny little hair details that are beginning to disappear and blend with the white background. The picture is getting a little bit soft, but the skin tones and the structure of the skin tones and the details is still completely nice. Okay, this is one of the most interesting tests. Overexposure studio and daylight non-controlled mixture. So the third test is a very common cinematography lifestyle type of situation where we have a mixture of controlled daylight in the studio and we have the outdoor lighting that we cannot control. We changed our Kelvin temperature on the sky panel to 5600 kelvins to match the outdoor Kelvin temperature nicely. But the one thing that we cannot control is the outside source of light. This is an excellent example situation to test how far we can stretch the MILF in a very common cinematography situation. We start the tests at f.4 and the background is overexposed for 2 stops. So here we are going for 1 stop overexposure on the key light, meaning on our sky panel that is illuminating our model's face. And this is pretty amazing, guys, the amount of information that we are still keeping in the blown out highlights in the background. This is a situation we cannot easily control, and without the support of a bigger film crew, this is one of the situations where the MILF really begins to shine and to show its power. Why these cameras cost so much? Because it can save a lot of production time and production effort and still deliver total professional results. Now we are going for 2 stops of overexposure on the key light, and oh my god, I mean, we still have the information in the 5 stops overexposed background, and the skin tones, even when magnified, still look completely professional and usable. All I can say now is this camera can really take some crazy, insane amount of overexposure and still deliver great looking results. Test number 3. How far do you have to push the MILF in order to get these details in the highlights, guys? To tell you the truth, I don't know. Here we are looking at 3 stops of overexposure and we are still getting completely usable results. This is insane. I mean, just look at the non-graded picture. Everything seems overexposed, but then with the color grading and just a couple of tweaks in the masking, we are getting our outdoor highlights back. Beautiful. We can still see the structure and the information in the highlights, so this is quite impressive by my terms. Now we change to a slightly different cinematography situation. We adjusted the kelvins to 3200 kelvins temperature, we turned off the overhead lights and we are creating a sense of mood, and we are going to be testing this type of lighting situation with the underexposure test to see how far can we push the sensor, especially when it comes to see what's happening in the shadow areas. We are starting with the 2.8 f-stop. We are going for 1 stop underexposure and closing down to f4, and we are still getting a beautiful, gorgeous looking image with all the details even in the shadows. Even when we magnify to 200%, the picture looks completely professional on no levels. At 2 stops under, we are still getting really decent results, but we can feel the image is on the verge of getting some noisy patterns, but they are still so very hard to spot. I mean, the picture still looks very moody and completely usable in terms of cinematography qualities. Now we are going to push the ISO in order to see how far can we go without getting noise patterns in the shadow side. We lift it up to ISO 320 and we can already see that we are getting a little bit of information back in the shadows and this picture looks nice. So we bumped 1 more stop, meaning we are at 640 and the structure of the picture is completely holding strong. I mean, this is almost perfect ISO for this camera and it holds all the information and the picture is looking sweet. Now we bump the ISO to 1280 and the skin tones on the false color fall into the greenish and pink tones, which means they're properly exposed, and this looks super clean. So now we lifted the ISO to 2500 and we can already notice some skin tone details not being represented and not silky smooth as the previous ones, especially in the shadow side of the face. We can already notice some suspicious patterns in the shadow, but still the image overall delivers very solid performance. So we cranked up all the ISO to the maximum of 3200 and we can see the noise patterns. The noise pattern on the shadow side is getting a little bit more noticeable, but when you zoom out and you look at the picture at 100%, I mean, this picture is still holding together. It's unbelievable how clean the 3200 ISO signal is. Signal to noise ratio is pretty much incredible. I mean, I would definitely feel very at ease using this camera in some low light nightclub type of situation with the 3200 ISO. So what we did here, we changed the ratio of the lights, we diminished the output of the sky panel from 60% to 30%, so basically the ambient light that you can see creates the beautiful sea of blue is illuminated with one single Astera Titan tube. We kept the ISO at 3200 and the key light almost becomes her phone, which also serves as a beautiful soft fill light. It's a very common situation, such as having a late night scene in a bar or in the club when you are trying to fine-tune your camera settings to match the existing ambient light, and that's exactly what we did here. This picture that we are seeing has a nice soft quality to it. Basically, you can see subtleties and some noise patterns in the shadow sides, but you know, it's still completely usable. I wouldn't hesitate shooting this way, especially for some moody type of scenes. Now we switch to 1600 ISO, the colors look vibrant and natural, and this scene still retains a nice intimate mood, and the blacks are really clean, so everything works nicely. At 800 ISO, with the output of the sky panel still being at 20%, we are getting slightly into underexposure mode by one stop. When we lift up and color correct with applying the basic grading, we are still in the game, folks. This is really neat looking. Now we are going still lower to ISO 400, which in this case means underexposing for almost 2 stops, but when we push back in post, we get great results basically even at 200% magnification. We can barely see any noise patterns, otherwise this picture is still looking strong, and this is where we can see the difference in the primetime experience in terms of cinematography and durability and flexibility of professional cameras. Now we are really pushing the limits in terms of underexposure. We went to 250 ISO, which means almost 3 stops of underexposure, but when we lift up, the results still look pretty amazing. Obviously, this image is getting soft and moody, especially in the shadow sides. There is some visible noise patterns, but you know guys, this is pixel peeping, right? I still love the structure of this image. Even in our color charts, you can see the blue channel and the dark are getting a little bit muddy, but overall, it's still an amazing experience to see how much can be saved in post when using the MILF. So we decided to play with the intensity and the color rendition of this camera. We completely turned off the sky panel and we eliminated the scene with just 2 Astera Titan tubes. We played with complementary colors. We went for cyan tones on the one, and with the other we were trying to mimic a really saturated version of the orange sodium vapor type of color. I have to say, this type of look really looks nice to me, and the color rendition at ISO 400 is spectacular. Everything stayed exactly the same. The only thing that we changed is the ISO. We lifted to 800 and this thing looks delicious. The skin tones are on the verge of being really oversaturated because with the additional amount of light pouring on the image, we are pushing the limits, but you know, this is still gorgeous stuff. For the last test in this lighting situation, we tried a little bit of the high frame rates on the MILF. We kept the 4.5K and we went all the way to 50 frames just to see how it holds the color rendition when adding some speed in the overcrank mode. For our last test, with the MILF, we went outside to see how well this camera handles more high contrast type of non-controllable lighting situations. As you can see, we have a nice variety between an open shadow, then we have some really nice structures in the background, and we also have some direct sun, creating really beautiful patterns. And we ask our model just to walk a little bit and find a sunny spot to see if we still get the details in the brightest areas of the image. So now we step down one stop at f.8 and we are getting beautiful imagery. I mean, I love this type of edgy, out of the safety box type of situations. And this camera proves to be an amazing tool even in high contrast situations where we can see details even in extreme highlights and going all the way to the shadows. At f11, it is amazing how much light recovery this camera has. Just look at this before and after. This is simply amazing how much highlight retentions the MILF has. gorgeous. So we are still staying at the same scene, but now we are overexposing one stop and we ask our model Yo to find the right spotlight again. I think we finally cracked the code, guys. We almost lost detail in the highlights. Yeah, it can be done, but you really have to work hard at it. And the sun is helping us obviously achieve that. By overexposing for 5 stops on her face, I think we finally managed to find the spot where we are finally losing detail. Apart from that extreme highlight, everything else looks amazing. So now we went even further with the crazy idea of overexposing by 3 stops in the medium gray. And in the highlights, you know, it's weird. I think this is the first shot of the day that we are not having a usable image in terms of quality. But this is such an extreme situation, guys. I really don't see any controlled environment having to deal with such type of extreme contrast. So how do you like it? Would you love to have one? I know I would. No matter which way you look at the prices of the MILF, the camera costs a lot of money. A workable MILF package is probably going to set you back at least 70 to 80,000 US dollars without the signature Primes lens set, of course. Despite the high price of the Alexa Mini LF, I'm pretty sure that these new Arri babes will be snapped up by rental houses everywhere. When we are talking about movies or episodic television with huge budgets, I think that productions won't even blink when it comes to hiring this camera. As you have seen in our tests, it is a true beast of a camera that delivers on its premise and proves to be extremely versatile no matter what type of lighting situation. If you like our show and if you want to see more of delicious filmmaking content, make sure to subscribe and hit that bell as well. And if you don't, that's okay. Subscribe anyway, because we are going to help you become a better filmmaker. Don't forget to comment below. I would like to know what are some of your biggest takeaway notes from this episode and what do you think about the MILF? A huge thanks goes to Arcadena Studio, who made these camera tests possible. This show is powered by Studio Production House, a video agency specialized in helping brands grow with amazing video content, and by Pro Video Rentals, a video rental company providing us with all the latest video tech. Make sure to stay inspired and shoot the stuff that you love. And always remember one thing. No matter what happens on the shooting set, we're gonna ride like it's alright. Bada bim, bada boom. Keep creating and see you next week in the new episode of the Pro Filmmakers.